Paradox has just released one of the most exciting development diaries for EU5. I'm talking about the complete cultural map mode of the world and religious map mode of the world, as well as they explain in this dev diary how religion and culture works. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the dev diary, but not only that, I will explain every single culture, how many pops they start with exactly, and I'm going to tell you how many pops usually get assimilated by the 16, 17, 1500s, what the usual cultural makeout is towards the end of the campaign. I've had about 10 complete games so far. Well, I wouldn't say complete. Let's say going up until 16, 1700s. Most of them gave up in the 1700s because of power creep or other reasons. So let's go ahead first and see the dev diary. Now, another thing that I want to do is give some more insight into the mechanics behind religion and culture. Now, the first map we have is the complete religion map in 1337, and then we have the religion map in the 1600s. Okay, so let's take a good look at the first one here. We've got a lot of Catholics in the west. Obviously, we've got the Romuvas, the Orthodox in between the Tengri Sunnis and the Catholics. And yes, they did take into account some feedback from the community, and I'm really happy to see that they did that because the Golden Horde only converted to Islam like 30 years prior to the start of the campaign. So it made zero sense for the entirety of the Golden Horde to be completely Sunni as it was before in this version of the game, and I'm sure this is going to be the final one. I don't expect them to make any changes to culture or religion, or not any major changes in any case. This is like as close to the historical distribution of religion and culture as you'll ever get with a game like Europa Universalis 5 or any game in general, right? Whether it upsets you or not, I think what they've done with both the culture and the religious map is really, really good. I don't have any complaints on it. The truth is, guys, a lot of work went into the historical part of the game. Another thing I will do in this video is explain what exactly each religion individually gives, including Hellenism, which is not at the start of the campaign on the map, but which you can actually get yourself as the Byzantines if you follow a certain chain of events. Well, it depends. Let's see if it's actually going to get scripted in. I had a couple of Byzantine games where I tried to trigger Hellenism. I got the event for the figure, the scholar that converted historically to Hellenism in the 1300s, secretly converted to Hellenism, and he is in the game. It does say that he might trigger Hellenism. However, for me personally, I attempted twice, it didn't trigger, so it might be like a very, very small percentage that it does trigger. I think it might be in the game because I got like 2 or 3 events in the event chain, but I didn't get any other events afterwards, and I think he died in the meanwhile, so I don't think I was able to get any more because it died. I'm not sure. I'll let you guys know more about that in my Byzantine AAR, which is going to come soon, by the way. I'm almost close to I'm in the 1600s with my Byzantine game, and it's been a wild one for sure. Once I finish that one, I will let you know more about it. So first off, I want to talk about these little religions in the Russian land. So these right here are what are called as the shamanist religions in previous games. In EU4, this would be shamanism in different forms. Now this is actually called European folk religions, and there's a few of them. The Mari one, which is Mari pagan. In the game, it's called Chimari Jula if you decide to convert to it. It allows for slaves to work with raw materials. It gives wild game output plus 10% and fort defense plus 10%. And at the start of the campaign, 339,000 pops are following the Mari pagan religion. There's a couple next to it that are basically identical. Now, it would be weird if I went over all of these. Most of these are identical. I'm going to tell you about a little one here that you don't actually see very well on the map. It's called Alan paganism. This is one of my favorite religions. It's again part of the European folk religions. That's what they're called, the group itself. And again, it allows slaves to work with raw materials. All of them have that as the first thing. I don't know why. But then you have some interesting stuff. You have cavalry combat ability, or cavalry power as it's called in EU5, plus 10%, and movement speed without roads plus 5%. In essence, if you are a horde and you convert to Alan paganism, you would have to pull in some way to do that, as it wouldn't be easy unless you start in this area and you decide to do it. That would be a little bit easier. You would have the fastest hordes in the game games. Let's start with the major religions. I know everyone's like, yo, tell me, Ludi, what about Catholicism, Orthodoxy, remove, and tell me all that schnitzel, boy. Okay, so the first one, obviously, we're going to talk about is Catholicism. It has 69.5 million pops that follow it at the start of the campaign, so that means basically all of Western Europe and Central Europe. It has a religious influence cap of plus 900, so that is an increased cap. It has monasteries allowed. It allows for whoever is the Pope to ban empire, so that means you can only be an empire if the Pope allows you to be one. That's a little bit of an interesting mechanic we're going to get into a little bit in another video once I do my either Brandenburg or Holland AAR, because I'm doing 2 games right now in the Western Europe, and both are getting very intriguing. With Brandenburg, I became the HRE Emperor, but there's some issues with that. Anyway, so in essence, at the start of the campaign, there is only one empire, the HRE Emperor. No other European nations, Western European anyway, Catholic European, can be empire unless the Pope decides otherwise. You get monthly reform desire, which eventually will trigger the Protestant Reformation, as you would expect. You cannot tax clergy, so clergy has minus 100% maximum tax, which means you literally cannot tax clergy, and clergy are insanely rich, so that's a big debuff for the Catholics in my opinion. You also have max literacy for clergy plus 25%, which means that you likely will have more innovation than anybody else on the planet if you're Catholic, at least at the start of the campaign, because literacy determines the amount of innovation you get alongside a lot of other things. That's one of the things that does determine the innovation gain. And also very important, you cannot declare war on religious head without a casus belli. That means you cannot no CB the Pope in essence. And a little detail is that 489 countries follow Catholicism, to be exact. Now let's talk about Orthodoxy. Orthodoxy, as you would expect, is similar to Catholicism, but very different onto itself. So Catholicism, there's a main head of the church, which is the Pope. For Orthodoxy, there's multiple different autocephalous entities. So that means there's different Orthodox churches, but all of them are Orthodox followers. It basically can mean that you can have multiple heads of the church. That's it. That being said, if you're playing as the Byzantines, it will be very easy to get all the other Orthodox under you and have them join your church because you are the Byzantines, right? You are the original head of the church. Now, the bonuses you get with Orthodoxy are max literacy increase by 5%. So that's for all your pops, not just for the clergy. You also get stability investment cost minus 10%, and you have a maximum religious influence plus 400. So you can have maximum 500 total religious influence, whilst the Catholic can have 1,000 maximum religious influence that they can bank. With that religious influence, you can do a variety of things, such as you can make saints, and making saints, for example, in the current version gives different bonuses. I remember I was in my Byzantine campaign, I made like 80 admin, 90 administrative, and 50 or 60 military leader that passed away, because obviously saints are leader that passed away, and I got an insane amount of stability and legitimacy. So, and then I made another one. Well, I wanted to make another one, but he had lower stats and he was like half of the stability and legitimacy. I was like, whoa, obviously I'm not gonna make this guy. So yeah, I think it's based on that. It does cost right now 150 religious influence to make a single saint. There's a lot of tenets that every religion has, and for the Orthodox, for example, it costs 50 religious influence to change the tenets to something else, and they give obviously different bonuses. Now, unlike Catholics, there's only 79 countries that follow Orthodoxy, with a total of 15,873,000 pops that follow it too. Third biggest group, of course, well, technically Sunni is bigger than Orthodoxy by a long shot. Well, we'll get into that because there's also the Asian religions which are bigger too. So yeah, let's talk about Sunni. I guess you could say Sunnism, as it's called, is spread all over North Africa, parts of Iberia, Middle East, parts of Africa, quite a few parts of Africa actually. It's a really strong religion. There's 82 countries that follow Sunnism at the start, and I think about 33 million, maybe 34 million followers. I don't know the exact amount because I haven't played in that area as much as I have in the West Europe and the Byzantines, because I've played a lot of games as Wallachia, Bulgaria, Serbia, Byzantium, Muscovy, so I know exactly what the starting situation in those areas are. Especially now, as the Sunnis and I believe Shiites and Ibadis, you do have some restrictions. You have ban import on wine, liquor, and beer obviously, right? You do get trade efficiency plus 1% for Sunnism, which is a huge deal. Trust me, it is a very huge deal because trade is one of your main sources of income. You have slaves working with raw materials allowed, just like you have the folk religions. You also have religious schools, a unique mechanic for the Sunnis, which goes into me saying, what I said earlier in previous videos, that there genuinely is like 80% of EU4 in EU5 already, which is a big deal in my opinion. I mean, compare this to EU4 launch, which was horrible. Let's face it. This is an insane launch. I'm genuinely convinced this is going to be a huge hit for Paradox in a good way. So I'm saying that it's going to be their flagship game by far. It's going to overtake Hoi 4 very quickly in my opinion, which right now I believe is the flagship game. You also have a value for Sunni Shiite bodies, which is mysticism versus jurisprudence. And between Sunni Shiite and Ibadi, the main difference is the Sunnis give the trade efficiency, the Shiites give the morale of armies plus 5%, and the Ibadi give trade advantage plus 5% and shipbuilding speed plus 5%, which trade advantage plus 5% is huge as well, but Ibadi is going to be very difficult to actually, get it going because you only have Ibadis in the north of Africa a little bit. You have a big chunk of Ibadis in Oman, which is still an Ibadi country predominantly, I believe, today, so that's very accurate actually. I'm glad to see they added Ibadi. Now, I think these are the major religions in the West. Probably should mention some interesting stuff such as Romuva. There's less than 1 million Romuvans. I'm not sure exactly how many, maybe 8, maybe 900,000. It has cavalry compatibility plus 10% as well, like the Alan religion. And again, slaves can work with raw materials. And that's basically it with the Western parts. Now let's talk about Tengrist and the Eastern religions, because there's a lot of juicy ones in the East that are very, very surprising for sure. When the game starts, Tengrism has about 6.6 million roughly people that follow it, so that's basically everybody in the Mongol Empire or various Mongol descended nations, I guess you could say. It has slaves allowed with raw materials, cavalry compatibility plus 10%, and monthly legitimacy 0.1, which is actually very significant amount, by the way. Now that is to say if you are a monarchy though, because at the start of the campaign, I believe the only Tengri nation that I can think of is the Chagatai horde, which is around here, and the Chagatai are not a monarchy, so the legitimacy 0.1 is useless. You don't get anything from it. You need horde unity as a horde, and it does not give horde unity. Now, I'm not sure if this is a bug and it's supposed to give horde unity or republican tradition or whatever, depending on what your government type is. I will make a ticket because I actually haven't made. I just realized now that it does not give horde unity, only legitimacy, so maybe they need to fix that. I think that might be not yet properly scripted in. Now, in Yuan, we've got a lot of people that follow San Jiao. I don't know how exactly it works with San Jiao, to be honest with you guys. What I do know is that the official religion of the Great Yuan is Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism. So this one here that you have all over Tibet. There's not many people that follow Tibetan Buddhism. I believe it's like 1.5 million, 2 million max. And there's 91 million starting population in Great Yuan. So 98% of the country is not following the religion that is official. That being said, San Jiao is a type of Buddhism itself, which offers max literacy plus 10%. It has the harmony mechanics. So this is basically setting the game up for when Ming rises, destroys Yuan, and they start obviously getting San Jiao as their primary religion, which is followed by all of the people. And you have the harmony mechanics as consequence as part of San Jiao. You also have righteousness, I believe it's called, mechanics. Legitimacy 0.5 monthly. To put things into perspective, for me right now in my Byzantine game, to get 0.5 legitimacy from just paying for it, I pay like 400 ducats. And yes, it's now ducats again, it's not gold anymore. But that's in late game, of course. But still, it's expensive, and you get that for free from the religion. It's a big deal, actually. And I also believe that you can have monasteries as San Jiao. I'm not going to talk about Tibetan Buddhists because it's a very small percentage that follow it. Let's also talk about Hindu, and that is the last one. Then we switch over to cultures. Similar to San Jiao, there's 91 million people that follow Hinduism. It has the ability to give religious figureheads, and it gives +1 tolerance of heathens, and I believe +1 tolerance of the true faith. That's it. And also, there's not many Hindu nations that are major, as you would expect, since Delhi owns most of India, and Delhi is not a Hindu nation. It follows Sunnism. The major follower of Hinduism that I can think of is Vijayanagar, which is in the south. It's also a breakaway nation from Delhi, and I believe they got like 2.5 million pops at the start of the campaign. The nation itself, and I believe almost all of them are Hindus, very few that are not Hindus. Now, for the figurehead mechanics, you can invite different figureheads to teach your people, quote unquote, and they give different bonuses such as population growth, estate satisfaction equilibrium, literacy, which increases both monthly and max literacy. So Miaphysites exist in Armenia, South Georgia, as well as Ethiopia. This is basically the Coptic religion from EU4. It has maximum tax for clergy estate minus 50%, so it's difficult to tax the clergy, but not impossible. So if you stack modifiers, you might be able to tax them a tiny bit, not as much, which is very interesting. It's like the middle ground between Catholicism and Orthodoxy when it comes to clergy, because you can tax Orthodox clergy big time. There's no debuff for that. Well, there's some debuffs, but you can still tax the schnitzel out of them. Religious influence is capped at 500, so you get an extra 400 from Miaphysitism. It gives -1 heretical belief tolerance and +1 for true faith, and it gives monthly religious influence 0.1 increase. And at the start, there's 4.99 million Miaphysites, so it's not that many. And we see right next to Miaphysites Nestorians, so that's a big group of Nestorians right here in the Middle East. There's another massive group of Nestorians around this particular area, but take note, they're mixed in with Eastern Buddhism. So we see there's two hash lines here. One of them is the Eastern Buddhists, which are also the same pinkish color, and the other one is Nestorians. There's not that many Nestorians here to point out. The majority of them are Eastern Buddhists, not Nestorians here. There's 5.5 million Eastern Buddhists in here, and there's less than 1 million Nestorians. I think there's like 800,000 Nestorians in the whole planet, and most of them are not in here. Most of them are in this area here, in northern Iraq, Syria, basically. Now, Nestorians are actually similar to Miaphysites a little bit because they can tax clergy half. But this basically, they have the same debuff, -50% maximum tax for clergy. They have the monthly religious influence 0.10% like the Miaphysites. Now, going back to this little area, because this is where a lot of different religions actually coexist, we also have another one that's very, very difficult to spot. You actually don't see it hashed at all, but it's in this particular bit. There's a little bit more in the southern tip around where I'm showing right now in China. I'm talking about Manichaeism. So Manichaeism, for those of you that don't know, is a unique religion. Technically, it's its own religious group in EU5, and it has only 100,000 followers. It has tolerance of heathens +1 and enables self-control mechanics. This is a unique mechanic. I'm actually not going to talk about it because I haven't tried it yet. I don't know it yet myself, but also because I don't want to spoil everything, you know, like this is something that is going to be very unique for sure. I might make a video on Manichaeist religion. I might probably do a run where I convert to Manichaeism as an Asian nation. Now, this is what the religious map mode looks like in 1600s in the Paradox game. As you can see, there's Protestants in France, Protestants in the northern parts of Europe, Sweden's Lutheran to be more exact. We've got Orthodoxy about the same spot where we always have it. Sunni consolidated in Anatolia and the Middle East. They consolidated the Golden Horde area. Tengris are reduced to Mongolia. Sanjiao is in China. We've got a little bit of Eastern Buddhist in Japan, a lot actually in Japan. I wouldn't be surprised if that's because Korea conquered Japan, because out of 7 games, I think 6 games I've seen Korea conquer Japan. Korea gets really strong in this game, and like because Japan gets fragmented because of the Sengoku Jidai, Korea takes advantage and they just take a buttload. Like almost every game, half of Japan is Korea. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if that's them that brought Eastern Buddhism in Japan. Also, to point out, that doesn't always happen like this, okay? Just to make it very clear. It is RNG. In my games, it's similar to this. The thing that I've seen most, though, is that Protestantism, Lutheran to be more exact, spreads around Central Europe. I don't think I've ever seen Lutheranism spread to France. Like, not once in my games. But then again, every game is unique, right? So most of the games, it's been spreading into Germany, the HRE lands. It spreads a little bit into Hungary, spreads into the north. Yes, that's true, especially Sweden. It spreads a lot. And I've also seen Hussite. So the Hussitism, I've seen it spread in the Czech area a lot, like every single game. So I'm kind of surprised to see that they don't have Hussites in their particular game here. They also trigger around the late 1300s, early 1400s, talking about Hussites. And yes, indeed, all of the Remuvas, the folk religions, disappear very, very fast in Europe. It's happened in my games as well a lot. I don't know if they show the New World religions, but the New World also has unique religions. They got Maya, they have ceremonial religion, which is a majority religion in the North American continent. There's also Nahuatl, and they have unique mechanics, especially Nahuatl, is really well done right now. They can build eagle and jaguar warriors with the Nahua religion. They have unrestricted slavery, and they have morale of armies plus 10%. So it's a really good religion, but it does come with its debuffs. If you know, you know. Now, again, I forgot about Hellenism once more. So Hellenism doesn't give too many stuff. It offers levy combat efficiency plus 5%, skill of new artists plus 10%, because I guess there's like art involved in Hellenism, I have no idea, and the ability for slaves to work with raw materials again. So yeah, it's very basic. It's in essence just another folk religion. Doesn't really have unique, at least I don't know, I have never triggered it, but I'm assuming it doesn't have any unique mechanics that I can see, since the other folk religions don't really have anything. It's just like copy pasted shamanism basically. We see here the religious group for Buddhism, which includes Bon, Eastern Buddhism, Shinto, Theravada, Samkhya, Tibetan Buddhist, and so on. They also mentioned here that the autocephalous Patriarchy of Moscow represents a specific branch of Orthodox Church. It's not a new religion unto itself. If you're part of that particular autocephalous Patriarchy of the Orthodox Church and you have certain members, the tenets of your particular church affect all the members. So whatever you decide to choose as your tenets or your saints and so on, they all basically follow that. It's actually pretty cool mechanic. I like it. I noticed though that they tend to leave a church a lot. So when I was playing Byzantium, my current game is Byzantium, I have to re-invite Bulgaria, Kiev, and Georgia every 10 years. I don't know why they leave, but they just keep leaving. It might be because I have a lot of antagonism because I'm expanding a lot. I don't know, could be. Maybe they just don't like me because I attack them. That might be also why. We see here the screen for the Shinto religion. You got the religious unity, which represents how many pops follow that particular religion. Conversion rate, so how fast you can convert to that particular religion. The unrest reduction for pops being that religion, or increased unrest for not being that particular religion if they're heretics and heathens. The amount of holy sites you have. Then you have the church itself. So if you click this little button, it opens up the church with all of the members. Then you have this unique honor and purity for Shinto, which is again unique mechanic for the Shinto religion. You got some interactions, cleansing ritual, pilgrimage, ritual offering, commit seppuku. Now the way that this in particular works is you need to have above 75 purity to start getting honor. And getting purity, well, the religious actions can give you some purity. Cleansing ritual gives 10 purity, and it costs 10 prestige. You can do this as many times. You can cleanse yourself as many times if you have the prestige available. Pilgrimage costs 10 ducats, and it gives 20 purity, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong, I don't remember exactly, but I think it's 20 purity. And then commit seppuku gives 50 purity, and you lose 50 stability. So that's really, really punishing. You never want to do that. Also, your leader dies, obviously. Unless your leader is really bad, then maybe it's not the worst idea. And religious offering, you get 30 purity, but you have to destroy a work of art. And work of arts are really important. They're really good. You don't want to destroy them, so you probably never want to do that, as you would imagine. So why do we need honor? Well, honor, if you go to the religious screen, affects everything that you do with the Shinto religion. So you can become the shogun, you need 100 honor, and you need to obviously win the Sengoku Jidai, so it's not just the honor. You can arrange marriages with honor, you can increase levies, you can increase tax income, you can do a lot of things with honor. So obviously you want to get as much honor as possible, which means you need to have your purity as high as you can possibly get it to. Why did I talk so much about Shinto? This is not even my Japan AER. I'm gonna do that eventually too. I feel like I'm giving a bit too much detailed information here. I like this little screen though. This shows how exactly conversion works. We have a monthly conversion in the province of Bursa, and it's affected by a lot of different things. Now it is minus 100 conversion from Abrahamic communities, which in turn is negated by the literacy of the clerics, work of arts, etc., etc. So it slows down conversion, but it doesn't completely stop it, just to put it into perspective. We see here you can choose to convert to whatever religion you want to. It does cost 50 stability, so you can become Shiite, you can go Orthodox, Jewish, whatever you want to go for. So this is obviously a reference to the famous Ottomans. Honestly, converting to Orthodoxy as the Ottomans is not really the worst idea in my opinion. Depending on the religion that you have and the culture that you have different unique advances too. So the Orthodox have unique Orthodox advances, which are technologies, in case you're new here. The Sunnis have their unique Sunni advances. There's also religious buildings that you have, like the madrasa here. The Muslims also have the Safi lodges, if I'm not mistaken, the Sunnis and all the other Muslims. We see the Confucian Academy that offers institution growth plus 50. Oh, that's actually really good. That's really, really good. Especially institution growth is was really hard to get sometimes. Now we get to the juicy part, the cultures. As the dev diary itself mentions, there are over 3,000 cultures in Europa Universalis 5. It might seem like an insane amount, but it's historical, okay? And even today, there are definitely a lot of different cultures, quote unquote, whatever that might be, and however you want to interpret it, right? Because it's not just language, that's for sure. Otherwise, we'd see a lot less cultures around the world. So first off, let's start in Europe. There are a lot of things here to go through. I will give you guys the exact, and I mean exact number for some of these cultures that I choose randomly, like Brandenburgian. So at the beginning of the campaign, we have 3,642,000 Greeks. However, based on whether you play as the Byzantines or not, and based on what happens during the plague, there's going to be a lot less in just a few years. So the plague usually murders about 30 to 50% of Greeks and pretty much all cultures in general, which means that after the plague, in my playthrough, for example, I was left with like 1.8 million Greeks all over. So like the Greeks in Venice, the Greeks in Cyprus, because you got to remember the southern tip belongs to Achaea, which is a subject of Naples. There's Epirate areas that belong to Naples, as they have also control over the Albanians. The Cyprus is not a primary culture Greek nation. Cyprus is in fact a French nation, but their culture is not called French. It's called Poitevin. Usually what happens, and pretty much in all games, is they convert the entirety of Cyprus to this culture. So if you haven't conquered as the Byzantine Cyprus in the first 50 years, expect to have like 50% Greek, 50% Poitevin, maybe like 2 to 3% Romatioi, which is also a culture that is predominant around this area, especially in Cyprus. There's quite a few. And if you don't conquer them for 100 years, Greek is completely going to be gone, usually, in the games that I've had so far. Maybe there's like 10% less left Greek. But yeah, the AI does tend to convert to its culture a lot. So in my 1600s Observer game, there was around 1.5 million left of Greeks and 8 million Turks. So yeah, there was definitely some conversion happening, not just by Turks, but everybody. Like the Armenians were converting, the Syrians were converting, the Bulgarians, everybody was converting. So it does fluctuate a lot as you progress in the campaign. Turks, we've got 1.6 million of at the start of the campaign. Majority of them are in Eretna, which has 321,000 Turks. Then Chandarids and Karamanids, and then Ottomans are fourth. The Beylik of Ottomans only have 206,000 Turks because the Ottomans have majority Greek in their country. So there's, I believe, 681,000 pops in Ottoman Empire, in the Beylik of Ottomans at the start of the campaign, and that's like 60% Greeks. However, they convert Turkish really fast. In fact, there are some unique things that allow them to convert a little bit faster than most cultures, and usually in 30 years, and I mean 30 years, it's already 70% Turks in the Ottoman Beyliks. So you wanna, as the Byzantines conquer back Anatolia, ignore the Balkans completely, let the Serbians and the Bulgarians do their thing. You really want to focus on grabbing the coastline of Anatolia, because if you don't, in 30 to 50 years, there's no more Greeks in that area anymore. And then it's going to be a lot more difficult too, because you're going to have a different culture and a different religion, because they also convert to Sunnism first before they convert to their culture, which makes it very, very difficult to keep those areas in check as you progress in the campaign. Now, another big culture that usually converts more than almost anything is Francian. Francian is the primary culture in France, as you would expect. At the start of the campaign, there's 1.5 million Francian, reduced to about 900,000 after the plague hits. However, usually by 1400, and I really mean just 14, that's like 70 years into the campaign, there's like 5 to 6 million Francian. So what they do is they slowly convert the entirety of France to Francian. By 1700, it's almost like 90% Francian, so like 20-30 million Francian. Same goes for the Castilians. At the start, we have 3.362 million Castilians, but then they convert the Astur Leones, which is the purple guys here, and they convert Galician and everything else very, very quick. So by 1550s, I'd say 1550s, there's like 80% Castilian in the entirety of Spain. And when it comes to the New World, that plays an important part too, because of course the New World is going to be the same culture as whoever colonizes it. So you have a lot of English, French, Castilians, Portuguese in the New World. In most games, I've only seen Western Europe in the New World. There's actually a rule in the game which you decide whether you want only Western European Hungarians AI to colonize the New World, or you don't mind anybody doing it. I leave it on default, which is Western Europeans, and because of that, you always see a lot of French and English and so on in the New World as well. Basically all over the New World. They completely overtake the native cultures in the New World very, very fast, actually. Another fan favorite, as you would imagine, is Hungarian. Now, the Hungarians themselves are about 2 million at the start of the campaign, 2.064 million to be exact. And there's also Transylvanians in here. There's German Transylvanians, there's Zekulars, there's Slovaks, there's Rusin as well, which is in the Maramuresh region above Transylvania. Transylvanian, there's 300,000. Transylvanian Germans, there's 104,000, and Zekulars 112,000. So what happens usually is Transylvanians disappear within 100 years of the campaign. If there's any left, it's usually like 100,000, 120,000, whilst Hungarian consolidates everything around. So you see like 4 or 5 million Hungarians as you progress. One area I haven't seen too much consolidation though is Germany, which is a bit surprising. Northeast Germany to be more precise. So Brandenburgish, which is the primary culture in Brandenburg, only has 386,000 at the start, and it stays around that much. Like I've seen it in the 1500s about the same amount, which is just weird. Like let's say they grow to 500,000-600,000, but that's just natural progression of cultures, right? Because you get more pops. But yeah, they don't really convert much in the H area from what I know. I kind of disagree with this because historically the point of the Brandenburg mark was to make it more German in that area. So you should expect to see a little bit more Germanization. It happens in Pomerania from what I noticed. Mecklenburg and the Stettin Volgas do convert to West and East Pomeranian, which is a Germanic culture, but the Polabian areas do not get converted almost at all. Silesian also gets consolidated very easily. Take note, there is two types of Silesian. There's the Silesians, which are part of the Slavic group, right? And then there's German Silesians, unless some type of German nation takes a hold of this, which never happens. Because Czech Republic, the Bohemians are so strong. Like Bohemia is insanely overpowered in this game. Not in a single game was this different. The Czechs conquered a few areas around. They consolidated. Nobody managed to touch them. Nobody managed to grab Silesia from them because they are just so overpowered. They easily integrate and make the entirety of Bohemia super, super powerful as you progress. And speaking of, there's 1.5 million, almost 1.6 million Czechs at the start of the campaign, and you also have 700,000 Silesian, the Slavic Silesians, and 800,000 Moravians. Altogether is quite a lot of population in Bohemia, which is why they are extremely powerful. Both economically and militarily, they are untouchable. Even Austria will never be able to grab Bohemia in this game because it's just too strong. Now, before we go outside of Europe, we also need to talk about the eastern parts. We've got Muscovite in the area around Muscovy. Who would have thought? There's 1.1 million Muscovites at the start of the campaign and about 757,000 Novgorodians. I don't know why, but personally, I've noticed that Novgorodians overtake Muscovites a lot. I don't know why at all. I've seen like later in the campaign Novgorodians being more than Muscovites for some reason, and I've also seen that Novgorodians have a tendency of conquering this area and turning it to Novgorodian. Now, one more thing to note is that we have a lot of these Tatar-based cultures here: Astrakhan, Crimean, Nogai, etc., etc. One thing that you don't notice is that there's also a lot of Mongolians. Almost every single province in the Golden Horde has between 0.1 to 5 to 6% Mongolians. There's a lot of Mongolians here. They're just less than 10%, so you don't see it on the culture map, but there are in fact a lot of Mongolians. There's 2.7 million Mongolians at the start of the campaign, which is a lot for most cultures. Other big numbers are Lower Egyptians, which is the purple one or pink one over here. There's like 3.3 million of them. There's also around 1 million, I think 900,000 Upper Egyptians, which are the ones along the Nile. And in North Africa, we've got roughly 800,000. It's like between 770 to 850, around that number for all of these. So we got around that much Zenati, around that much Tunisian, around that much Moroccan and Algerians. One culture that is a bit surprising is Sanhaja, which is the green one that is mixed in with Moroccans here. There's 770,000 of them, and Libyans there's about 450,000 or so. I think one of the bigger cultures, if we don't include India, because there's just insane amounts of pops in India, I'm not even going to go into that, there is a lot of them, but one of the biggest homogenous culture groups is Saigoku. There's about 4.8 million Saigoku, and the other types of Japanese, there's significantly less, whilst in China there is ridiculous amounts. Gan, which is the one right below that right here, is 10 million pops. The biggest one actually is Wu. Wu has 11 million plus, and for Joseon we have 2.8 million. India, it's like 8.9 in Bengal, 8.7 in Punjab. I might have mixed that, it might be the opposite. No, I think Bengal is the highest amount there. Marathi is 6.4, Telugu is 7.1, and then Tamil, and this one's like 4 point something million, I think 4.4, 4.6, something like that. These are the major cultures. I'm not going to go into the rest of them. If you guys have any specific culture you want me to give you the exact number, let me know in the comment section and I definitely will answer. I'll go through the comments, and in my next video I'll make sure I'll let you guys know how many pops they have. Did I mention the English, which have 4.3 million? Did I mention that? I think I did, right? Let's explain everything here in detail. Cultural tradition is the defense power of your culture in cultural wars. What are cultural wars? Where it's, for example, like the war between Hungarians and Romanians, or Greeks and Turks in various areas, where which one is going to be the dominant culture. The more pops of a specific culture, the higher the cultural tradition. Cultural influence is the attack power in said cultural wars. So like first one's defense, second one's attack in essence. There's different buildings, advances, prestige, laws that can increase your cultural influence, and even works of art once completed will increase it. Assimilation rate, very self-explanatory, how fast you can assimilate to that particular culture. There's a lot of things that influence this. One of the biggest one early on is whether you're spiritual or humanist. Almost everybody's spiritual, by the way. Very few nations are humanist at the start. And spiritual will lower the assimilation rate and increase the conversion rate to your religion, whilst humanist increases the assimilation rate, lowers the conversion rate. Accepted cultures is the amount of different cultures that you can have either as tolerated or accepted. What does that mean? Well, we're gonna scroll. Also, artists are actual physical people. Works of art are works of art that give you different bonuses in certain locations. For example, I think they show over here somewhere, local work of art influences the monthly assimilation in Constantinople. So yeah, works of art are really important. You want to have them, but usually they're very expensive, so you need to have money to have them as well. Going back here, you have different tiers for cultures, right? You have discrimination, so that means that particular culture is pretty much not accepted in your country. Now, discriminated pops cannot be raised as levies unless you have special laws enacted that allow you to raise discriminated pops as levies. Tolerated pops are a little bit better than discriminated, but they also cannot be raised as levies unless special things are met. Primary and accepted pops are the ones that you can raise as levies very early on in the campaign. Levies are the most important. Well, throughout the entire game, levies are really important. So having a high accepted cultures amount means that you can raise more of your citizens. So all of the accepted pops you can raise as levies too, which is huge, especially if you have a lot of different cultures in your country, is very important. It's basically a lot easier to just accept Slovaks than convert all the Slovaks, because converting all the Slovaks is going to take 200 years and you're still going to have Slovaks around and it's going to be a pain. So you're better off just accepting them. But when you cannot accept, or when you have like very few of a specific pops, obviously it's better to convert them if you need to, or assimilate them, whatever. Also, yes, indeed, Hungary is very, very diverse culturally in 1337. This is the 1723 cultural makeup, whilst the first one is the 1337. In the meanwhile, they have accepted a lower or lesser Poles, so that means they've expanded into Poland. Other pops are still tolerated, not yet accepted. The relations determines how well nations with those particular pops see you. So for example, if you have neutral, nobody gives a schnitzel, right? But if you have negative relations with one of these cultures, and say there's countries that have that particular culture as their primary culture, then those countries will have a negative malice with you by -10 relation. Also, having negative cultures lowers the satisfaction of those pops. So that means they're a little bit more upset if you have a negative opinion of them. So for example, as the Byzantines, when you start the campaign, you can get really good relations of Bulgarians by improving and with the nation of Bulgaria. That way the Bulgarian pops will be positively seeing you, and you get increased in satisfaction. I think it's 5% pop satisfaction increase if you see him positive, 5% minus if you see him negative. And it also, of course, increases your relation with Bulgaria in that particular case by 10 because you see their particular primary culture is positive. So this goes like this. The first tab is how your culture sees other cultures. The second tab is how those cultures see you. So if you have positive here, that means those cultures, those nations with Croatian. So if you have positive here, those nations that have Croatian as primary will get the bonus with you, and you will get the extra 5% satisfaction of those pops, and vice versa. Also, to accept a culture in the country, you need to either have 1 million pop represented, or 2.5% of your total population has to be of that particular culture. So we see here, for example, for Serbians, it's 800,000, not yet 1 million, not yet 2.5% of the entirety of Hungary's cultural makeup, which is why they cannot accept Serbians yet. The amount of cultural capacity is determined on a few things. They mentioned duchies get 0.5 cultural capacities, kingdoms +1, empires +2. There's advances that increase it. There's laws that massively increase it. We see for the Muscovites, acceptance culture of Muscovy. We got Ryazanian, Smolenskian, Merian, Meshar, Novgorodian. Now, take note also, the cost for accepting cultures differs. So there's a higher cost for accepting, there's a lower cost for tolerating. Also, the cost for cultural capacity is different based on their cultural opinion of your primary culture and the size of said culture in relation to the primary culture that you have. So, for example, if you've got great relations with Andalusians, for example, here, and Andalusians are very small, it's going to cost less. But if there's a big amount of Andalusians, it's going to obviously cost a lot more cultural capacity. Or if they're pissed off with you, it's going to cost more again. And if they see you as an enemy, you cannot tolerate or accept them. So in the case here of Andalusian, if you want to tolerate or accept them, what you have to do is you have to interact with the nation of Granada, which has Andalusian as a primary culture, and you need to spend 50 favors. It's an actual diplomatic interaction, 50 favors to improve cultural opinion. So you got to do it before you murder Granada, basically. Or if you don't do it, then you have to just culturally convert all the Andalusians. If there's no culture, if there's no country that has that particular culture as their primary, there's no way for you to actually, at least not that I know of, no way to improve the relations with that particular culture then. Oh, actually, they mentioned that right here. I probably should have read this dev diary fully before I started making this video, shouldn't I? I'm the worst, I swear. Oh, they also show a couple of other interactions here. Invite settlers, you basically invite pops from that particular nation to your country. It costs 5 favors. It is a really good way of getting more population. And if you invite them in a province that has high assimilation rate, like your capital, right? Then you can easily convert them to your primary culture passively. So it's really smart inviting settlers almost always. Like, I love to invite settlers all the time because it grows your economy, it grows everything, right? So it's a good interaction to always do. Now, assimilating and converting is very slow. They mentioned here there's a base of +2 pop assimilation to your primary culture a month. That does not mean, however, that every integrated location will automatically assimilate. There's other factors that come into play. Average literacy of the clergy there, buildings like the marketplace, which increases your assimilation rate. It's 1% assimilation speed per marketplace. So if you have 15 marketplaces in that location, you can get 15% assimilation rate. Depends on how many you have. There's other buildings that do it too. The level of control determines. So less control lowers the assimilation and conversion. So if you have 0 control, it's -100% conversion and assimilation. If you have 100 control, there's no debuff. So you want to have as much control as possible before you start assimilating or converting pops there. There's privileges, spiritualist versus humanist. There's a lot of things that really determine it. We see here, for example, the monthly assimilation in Constantinople. It's an integrated province. We see promote culture. So that means you have an interaction to promote culture. You basically assigned a cabinet member to actively promote culture in that particular province. Then a lot of things that come into play to this. A lack of control. So this is not you capital. This means this is somebody else. That's not the Greeks. So yeah, it says here Hungarian cultural influence versus Greek cultural influence. So this Hungarians trying to convert Greeks to Hungarian and Constantinople right here. This is where the cultural war comes into play, because Hungarians have higher cultural influence than the Greek cultural tradition. So the higher attack than defense, you get the bonus of 50%. If it was higher defense than attack, you would get a debuff to assimilating that particular culture in essence. The devs also mention exactly the same thing here. We see the Two Sicilies in 1540 cultural tab. They got quite a lot of cultural tradition and influence. They got 2.69 out of 4.4 accepted cultures. They have an assimilation rate of -7%. It's actually pretty good. It means they have quite a little bit of humanism, or going towards humanism anyway. 50 works of art is huge as well. And we see here when you assign a cabinet member to assimilate, he will be doing that. What determines the rate at which he's doing it is also his diplomatic skill. So this guy has a lot of military, not so much diplomatic. To be more optimal, you would change it with another advisor that or cabinet member that has 90 plus or as much as possible a diplomatic skill. That would increase the rate at which you assimilate. You get more pops assimilated as such. And if you make him the head of a cabinet, you also double down on that. And if you increase the cabinet efficiency, right now it's 74 with his skill and whatever cabinet efficiency they have, if you increase that, you make even more pops assimilated fast. By far, using a cabinet member to assimilate actively is the best way to change over to your culture. Another big deal is once the third age triggers, you're going to be able to become a cultural hegemon. There's a few hegemons in the game, not just cultural one. The cultural one, though, increases the cultural tradition by a lot. It also forces change of court language, and you can assimilate an entire area. That's right, not one province, an area. That means multiple provinces can be assimilated at the same time. It is really vital that you try your best to become a cultural hegemon when you're game through. It's gonna, honestly, by far, cultural hegemon is my favorite one. The other hegemons are naval, military, economic, and diplomatic. With cultural, that's 5 hegemons, and each of them give really good bonuses. My favorite one is this one. Second after this, I probably like military hegemon, which gives war score cost minus 10%. You can violate sovereignty, and you can use soldiers as workforce. So it is a really interesting type of all the hegemons unlock unique abilities, which is really awesome in my opinion. Maybe we can have a hegemon dedicated video in the future or talk more about it in my AAR, because it is really cool stuff to know. Now we also see here the Iberian Galleon is an advance available to Iberian cultures like Catalan, Aragonese, Castilian, and so on. We see the values themselves. Spiritual gives plus 50% pop conversion, whilst humanist plus 50% assimilation rate, and the antagonism religion influence is plus or minus 50%. Basically determines how much antagonism you're going to get, whether you're more spiritual or humanist. Another important part of this dev diary is languages. Now languages are different from cultures. You have, for example, Romanian, which is a language and it's spoken by different cultures. So Wallachians, Moldovans, Transylvanians, all of them speak Romanian. Same here, all of the French cultures speak French, as you would imagine. And there's actually 4 different languages used: court language, common, market, and liturgical language. Court language, the one spoken by your court, obviously. Common language, the one spoken by the people in that area. So a province that has predominantly Wallachian is going to speak Romanian, the common language. But if the leadership is not Romanian, the court language could be something else. Or heck, they could be Wallachians, but still have a different court language. Now, speaking of, we also have a liturgical language, which is the language of the religion, worship, and ceremonies, and market language, which is the trade language in essence. And all of these actually do something. For example, the liturgical language, which is the language of the religion, increases your innovation gain, which is a really big deal actually. They also mention works of art here. Works of art are basically items, I guess you could say, and these items have different levels. They are created by artists. Now, based on the skill of the artist and how many you have, you might have more or less works of art created throughout the game. We see here in 1540 the Sicilians have a few artists, and you can see what they're doing. This guy's working on a new statue, this guy's working on a new miniature painting, etc. Once these are completed, depending on the quality of the item, they will give different bonuses. I'm glad to see that they're covering military and war next week, because there actually have been a lot of changes to military and war, and I wanted to do a video on that, but having them cover it means I'm probably going to be able to show you guys the actual panels and stuff and talk about it as I'm showing the panels, which is a lot better off than me just talking without showing anything in the background, right? Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Love you all, and I'll see you in the next one.